Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. Today we're talking about a few cards currently trending on the market for a variety of reasons. We're right at the end of the year, so it's sort of a weird limbo time. We know that the format is going to change with crossover breakers and to a lesser extent Supreme Darkness coming out. We should be having some cool reprint sets announced for early 2025, and of course there's likely going to be another ban list as well. So we're covering just a few things that are currently happening all across the board so that you guys can be prepared for when those changes are here. Let's get started. Kicking things off, let's take a look at Small World. So this is a card that's pretty cool. I remember for a little while there, it seemed like everything was going to try to splash in Small World because it's essentially a generic search card for any monster. It's a bit complicated, but basically you banish a monster from your hand and a bridge piece from your deck, and then you get to add a monster from your deck to your hand. Now the cool thing is that this card does all of this on resolution, so if your opponent does choose to Ash Blossom it, it's just a 1-for-1 and you don't go -1. Now apparently, this card is being talked about as a tech option for the Crossover Breakers format. I was first told that this card is being used in Ryzeal as a searcher, or at least it will be when the set drops, since 7th Tachyon isn't coming out until Maze of the Master releases in March of 2025. However, I did see some players looking at it as an option in Malice as well, though it does also banish, so you would in fact lose harder to something like Artifact Lancia. I'm not too sure exactly how amazing this card would be in either deck. Only time's gonna tell for when the set actually drops and we get some competitive events underway. This card was reprinted in Rarity Collection 1, so in terms of just finding a copy for yourself to use, that should be pretty easy to do. Most of its printings are pretty cheap. It's basically just the quarter century printing that has gone up. They've been mostly under $10 for this card's entire lifetime, but they've now jumped up to just over $20 per copy. Aside from that, you can basically play whichever printing it is you prefer or whatever fits with the rest of your deck. The only thing I'll note is that the original Secret Rare printing from Burst of Destiny does look a little bit different from the Rarity Collection 1 Secret Rares, and those are only $1 or $2 each, so if you are really into the original printings of cards, that might be something to consider picking up. Next up, we're looking at a couple of other cards that are trending on the market because of the new archetypes coming out in Crossover Breakers. These are cards that we've talked about before, but they've seen notable price spikes since then. The first one here is Splash Mage. This card is a Link 2 monster that special summons any Cyberse monster from your graveyard but negates its effect, and then you are locked into Cyberse monsters for the rest of the turn. This card is currently being hyped because it's a really strong extra deck option in Malice, which is a Cyberse based strategy coming out in Crossover Breakers. From Malice lists that we've seen in the OCG, all of them run at least one copy of Splash Mage, but we've actually seen some lists choose to run 2 because it's that important of a card for link climbing, and it allows you to go into the Link 3 Malice monster quite easily. In terms of availability, this card was actually a common when it first came out, and those are still basically bulk because it's not that old of a card. However, the card did get an ultra rare reprint in the first Ghost from the Past set, and even though it was basically bulk when it came out, we've now seen the ultras go up to between $7 and $8 a piece, since that is the card's only holo printing. Hopefully you bought into these when we looked at them a couple of months ago because they were only $1 or $2 each. Now personally, I would not be buying into this card at this price. It just seems way too high when I could just use the common instead. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is that it's very possible Splash Mage will be reprinted in Crossover Breakers itself, since Konami might want to make the card accessible and maybe even give it a collector's rare upgrade. So this is definitely something I would consider offloading your extra copies of while its price is so high. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. I'm also super excited to let you guys know that we have our Black Friday sale currently live on the site. That's right, all of your favorite sleeves and accessories are discounted now right through to Black Friday. If you want to try out some sleeves for the first time, now is the perfect time to order them before your next big tournament. Or if you've ordered them before but need to restock, we've got you. Whether you're a casual or competitive player, I'm sure that you'll find something perfect for you over at MSTmerch.com. On to the next one, we have Mogic Egg Gator. So this card is going to be a very important extra deck card going into the Crossover Breakers format. It's not something that you ever expect to summon, but rather you want to send it directly from your extra deck to the graveyard, since if you do, you can negate the effect of any face-up card on the field. Now this is a really important option for Ryzeal, which has in-engine cards that can send Aggregator to the graveyard to interact with your opponent's board, and it's also how you ensure that you don't lose to something silly like Flying Sea. However, even non-Ryzeal decks will still want to play Aggregator. In the OCG, it was very common to side Ultimate Slayer, where you could bounce the Ryzeal Ixies monster while using Aggregator to negate the Ryzeal field spell, so you effectively deal with 2 cards with just the 1 Ultimate Slayer. Price-wise, Aggregator only has 1 printing. It was a super rare in Darkwing Blast, which was a set that a lot of people opened, but primarily because they were hunting for the Bystials. However, Aggregator wasn't reprinted in the tins, so it is a bit harder of a card to find. That said, Aggregator is currently between $4 to $5 on TCG Player. Not too crazy expensive, but still up from the $1 that it was at when we were looking at it before. With this one, if you do plan on playing meta next format, you should probably own a copy or 2 for yourself to use. Even though it is a little bit higher in price, we do only have the 1 version available, so we kind of have to suck it up here. However, I'd still look to offload any extra copies that you have over the course of the next month, just in case Konami does decide to reprint the card in Crossover Breakers itself. Moving on, we have a card that's a little bit confusing to see trending. It's Snake Eye's Poplar. So Poplar is of course an incredibly important piece of the Snake Eye engine. It searches for either Divine Temple or Original on Summon, and it's the best card to search for off of Bonfire a lot of the time, as it does provide a ton of value, being multiple bodies. Because it was so important, Poplar was actually limited to 1 on the most recent ban list, alongside Snake Eye Ash, which was a really huge hit to Snake Eye strategies, making opening with Poplar really not that great. However, Snake Eyes has remained a popular strategy this format, as the Snake Eye Fire King as a Mina deck has really taken over a lot of the competitive scene. However, we have actually started to see Poplar trending upwards in price. After the tins dropped, the card was considered to be very accessible as a one-of, so it was only worth around $1 or $2. However, over the past month or so, the card has been moving up in price, and we now have the original ultra rare printing from Phantom Nightmare coming in at $5 to $6, while the secret rare reprint from the tins are all the way up to $9 each. Now, in my opinion, this was really surprising to see, since you don't generally expect to see cards that were recently hit to be among the ones trending upwards, but I suppose that with cards like Diabellstar, Wanted, and Bonfire all being extremely budget options now, it does make sense for other pieces of the engine to start going up, and Poplar is still a harder card to access than things like Ash or Oak, each of which has super rare printings from core sets. Personally, I don't really expect the Snake Eye cards to be around in the game for that much longer. I'm kind of assuming that they will get hit on the next ban list. I don't know if that's going to be Flamberge or Wanted or something else finally being banned. Either way, Poplar is probably another card that you want to offload, since I really don't think that the deck will be around in a format or 2, and you want to take advantage of the current hype. Here's a card that I really like. We have Relinquished Anima. This card is a Link 1 monster that can be summoned using any level 1 monster except for a token, and it's really simply able to equip itself with a monster that it points to. Last weekend at the OTS event in the last round of Swiss, I actually used this to eat my opponent's Thunder Dragon Colossus, which was really lucky for me since I had Wanted and Bonfire in my hand. It was really funny once he realized what he'd done. Anyways, Anima is currently a really important card in all of the different Snake Eye variant decks. Link Karibo is currently banned, so this is a card that does get made pretty often. It keeps a body on the board when you want to use Poplar's effect. It's a dark so that you can summon Dark the Dark Charmer. It's just a really solid card to have access to, and you can punish your opponent for playing too sloppily. Now, this card is just one of the things that you can't cut from your list if you're playing Snake Eye, in my opinion, and because of how popular Snake Eye and Fire King decks have been recently, we are starting to see Anima trending upwards, though a little bit strangely. Now, oddly enough, it's the Ultras from Dual Overload that are the highest in terms of price. They're coming in at $8 each right now. The quarter century printing from the 2024 tins is actually the cheapest one at only $3 to $4 each, though for a while they were only $1 or $2 when the tins first dropped, so technically this is them trending upwards as well. And then for the Brothers of Legend Secret Rares, those are the middle rarity, coming in at around $5 each. this card doesn't have too much utility going into next format as it isn't used by either Ryziel or Malice, but I feel like it's inevitable that this card will eventually be used in something. If you can, I would definitely dump those ultras and maybe some of your other copies at their hyped up price. I do feel like this is a card that could dip once it rotates out of the format and then shoot back up in price later on down the road. So this is a really odd one. We next have Necros Cycle. This is one I just want to touch on briefly, but as we mentioned before, we do have some new Necros support coming at some point in 2025. I know that maybe the cards aren't enough to make the deck meta relevant in 2025, but the new cards are still really good and make the deck a lot better. Necros Cycle is one of the important ritual spells for the deck. It's the one that allows you to summon from the graveyard by tributing from your hand or field. Of course, all of the Necros cards can be searched with one another, so from most of the lists that I've seen, Cycle is just a one of, especially since you can add back all of your banished Necros cards to your hand at once. Anyways, it's actually just the secret rare version of Necros Cycle from Battles of Legend Heroes Revenge that is currently trending, coming in at $7 to $8 per copy. It may seem weird that this card of all things is going up, but when we look at the other Necros cards, this is one of the only ones that has just a singular holo printing. A lot of the other cards have multiple holo versions, so you can pick whichever rarity it is that you want to play and have a more budget option or play what you like. But if you want to play an all holo Necros deck or max rarity Necros deck, you need to pick up secret rare cycles, which has caused this card to go up over the last few weeks. Now, of course, we don't know if this card will or will not be reprinted in what will likely be the next Battles of Legends set, where the cards will get imported. I think that Necros won't see too many reprints because we did see a bunch of them reprinted in Dual Power a few years ago, and some of the cards were in the Quarter Century Bonanza set as well, so it's definitely possible that Cycle doesn't get another printing. If you're a dedicated Necros player and you want to play the deck once again, then do go ahead, hold on to your copies of Cycle, but other than that, I'd expect Necros not to be too meta relevant, so I would be looking to offload this card while the price is so hyped up. And finally, the last card we have here is Decode Talker Heat Soul. So back when Link Karibo was in the game, I loved going into this card as a part of my end board. It hasn't really been a thing for a while. Now, however, it seems that Heat Soul is making a bit of a comeback. You can still make this card with something like Sunlight Wolf and IP Masquerena. The downside is that your Link resource management is a little bit inefficient. The other thing is that this is going to be a pretty good extra deck option in Malice, which can bring this card out quite easily. It's a fire, so it also doesn't conflict with your use of Dominus Impulse. The only thing is that cards like Dimension Shifter and Mulcharmy Fualos aren't that great to draw into with Heat Soul, but hopefully you can dodge those and draw things like Impulse, Ogre, or Droll and Lockbird instead. Now, fortunately, Heat Soul was reprinted in Rarity Collection 1, so we have the card extremely easily accessible. However, Link Karibo got hit around this time when Rarity Collection dropped, so Heat Soul was actually really cheap on release. For the past few months, it's mostly been a $5 card for the QCR version. However, with the card seeing some usage in Snake Eye Fire King Azamina, as well as its likely upcoming use in Malice, we are starting to see that quarter century printing of Heat Soul trending upwards, and it now sits at double its previous price point at $12 per copy. This card is up quite a bit, but fortunately, you do have those budget printings like the Secret Rare or Collector's Rare that still look really nice, and even with the QCRs, I think they have the potential to keep on trending upwards towards $20 if the Malice deck is really that competitive. This is definitely a card that you're going to want to make sure that you own a copy or two of going into next format. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Crossover Breakers is literally less than a month away, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see exactly how that is going to shape up the format. Also, just so that you guys know, I am actually going to be going to YCS Anaheim to do the written coverage for Konami this time again, so hopefully I'll be able to see some of you guys there. If you do see me and I'm not working, feel free to say hi. I'd love to meet some of you guys. Anyways, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.